please welcome this afternoon's speaker, Dr. Paul Kengor.
Thank you, Donna. It's great to be here. I know I'm in the right place when any mention of my writings of Saul Alinsky and Hillary Clinton elicits groans. So very interesting. I love this city, love this area. I was trying to think how you could welcome me as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. And I guess I could just say that I was born in the same city and went to college, undergraduate, the same university as Mike did.
All right.
No one groaned for that. No one groaned for that. I was at Eureka College last night, and I spoke there. I spoke on Ronald Reagan and John Paul II and Fulton Sheen. And there's another battle going on with the Archdiocese of New York and Peoria over whether or not to bring Bishop Sheen's remains back to Peoria. It continues to go on. But it's fascinating, this part of the country, and into northwestern Illinois and down south from Tampico all the way down to so Tampico is the birthplace of Ronald Reagan. El Paso was the birthplace of Fulton Sheen. I drove through there last night about 9 o'clock. It was too dark, couldn't see anything. But the idea, a friend of mine who's a talk show host in Philadelphia pointed this out too. He said, we think we're so cool from Philadelphia and the East Coast and everything, but isn't it amazing that probably the two greatest communicators in America of the 20th century, Ronald Reagan and Fulton Sheen, came out of the Midwest, right? Came out of Illinois. I was talking to John Morris of the Peoria Riverfront Museum last night. He ran the Ronald Reagan Society at Eureka College. And that's just a short list. I mean, at one point in the 1930s and 1940s, Fulton Sheen went to Bishop Spalding Catholic School, which was affiliated with St. Mary's Cathedral in Peoria. One of his classmates was the guy who became Fibber McGee. And across the street at the girls' Catholic school was Molly McGee, Fibber and Molly McGee. And they had the #1 show in radio for like at least a decade in the 1940s. And also right there in Peoria, and a classmate was Amos of Amos and Andy. So right there you got 4 of the top people in radio at that period, all from Peoria. And then the great communicator of the 20th century, the guy they called the literal great communicator, Ronald Reagan, from that area as well. So I don't know what it is about the water out here, or the air, or something, but very, very impressive, very impressive. Well, what I'm going to talk about today is not quite as inspiring, but no, it is actually. The church's response is inspiring, but its response to what? The battle against communism and socialism. What Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels wanted, the Communist Manifesto was published in 1848. And communism had existed before then, but that became basically the programmatic statement of the Communist Party. So here, Marx and Engels would lay out in this short book, and I run into young people all the time all around the country who say to me, communism's a pretty good idea. Communist Manifesto is a pretty good book if you read it. And I say, yeah? Have you read it? Well, I skipped around a little bit, I read a little bit here and there. So you haven't read it, have you? Well, if you read it, you'll see it's really not a pretty good book. I'll give you some quotes to back that up. The opening words of the manifesto is, "A specter is haunting Europe, the specter of communism. All the powers of Europe have entered into a holy alliance to exorcise the specter." That's the language that Marx and Engels use. That's not exercise with 2 E's, right? Not to put it on a treadmill or an elliptical, right? It's to exorcise the demon. And they note there, after naming 5 or 6 of the different forces of Europe that are opposing the specter, they note the Pope first. They know the Catholic Church is the biggest enemy. This line right here in the manifesto ought to convince everybody right off. It's not a very good book. The entire communist theory may be summed up in a single sentence. Abolition of private property. Abolition of private property. I mean, my 7-year-old daughter, Gianna, could tell you, Daddy, they're going to have to kill people to do that. Right? I mean, there's nothing more basic. It's a fundamental natural right. You're Judeo-Christian, from the cave to the courthouse. The Ten Commandments, thou shalt not steal, implies that people have the right to property. If you're going to take away property, you're going to have a battle on your hands. You're going to need guns and you're going to need gulags to do that. And then they double down on this. You are horrified and are intending to do away with private property? Then what do they say? Well, we don't actually mean we're going to do away with private property. No. Precisely so, that is just what we intend. And they even say in the beginning of their 10-point plan, of course, despotic inroads will be necessary in order to do this. You're going to need despotism. You're going to need tyranny to try to take away people's private property. Bad idea. Marx acknowledged that his views on property stood contrary to the social and political order of things. So they got it, right? They knew how radical this was. Communism seeks to abolish the present state of things. Look at all the categorical statements. Right? What do you want to do? I want to abolish all private property. I want to abolish the present state of things. Be a little more specific, right? Abolish the present state of things. The close of the manifesto says, and this is very telling because you'll see this all the time, especially with different movements that join up with communist groups. Angela Davis, right? Who was one of the speakers of the Women's March in Washington. By the way, today's International Women's Day. It was started by Clara Zetkin, who was a German communist. They were celebrating it on the Today Show this morning. People don't even know. People don't even know the origins of this stuff. But you have Angela Davis up there on stage at the Women's March, and Madonna's there with her, and Ashley Judd, and these girls are wearing all these pink hats, and she's talking about immigration rights, LGBTQ rights, climate change, flora and fauna. She doesn't mention any of them. She ran on the Communist Party USA ticket for president, vice president twice, in 1976 and 1980. But they support these movements. Communists everywhere support every revolutionary movement against the existing social and political order of things. So if they can see an ally somewhere on another issue, generally on the left, maybe among liberals that they're not allied with on communism, they're willing to support the liberals in doing that, including things like redefining marriage. The communists were for same-sex marriage long before the general population was, because that's going to help them take down the existing social order of things. They're on board, if that's what they need to do. The communists disdain to conceal their views and aims, wrote Marx and Engels. They openly declare that their ends can be attained only by the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions. Which is why our presidents, from Woodrow Wilson all the way up to John F. Kennedy and Ronald Reagan, said these guys are about violence. Call for the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions. Reminds me of the AOC Green New Deal thing, which talks about retrofitting every existing building in the United States. Right? You think they're just saying something like those that need it, right? The buildings that need it. All. Home education, religious education. They went after this in 1848. So you thought it was just about economics and property, right? About classes and the proletariat. Do you charge us with wanting to stop the exploitation of children by their parents? Marx and Engels wrote. To this crime, we plead guilty. Guilty. Catholic Church teaches that the first home for education, right, is the home. Parents, the family. But you will see we destroy the most hallowed of relations when we replace home education by social. First thing the Bolsheviks do, one of the first things they did was they took all churches away from the Russian Orthodox Church, all schools away from the Russian Orthodox Church, and put everybody into government collective schools. That would be the new center of teaching. Point 10 of the 10-point plan by Marx and Engels calls for free education for all children in public schools. That was 1848, which also shows what economic illiterates they were, because there's no such thing as free education, right? I mean, yeah, it's what your property taxes pay for, right? I don't know what you guys pay for, $20,000 a year, at least, right? That mainly goes to schools. It's paid for. It's not free. They don't have money trees in Washington. They shake the trees and walk around with baskets and use them for fun education. It's not actually free. Marx railed against the disgusting bourgeois claptrap about the family and education, the hallowed correlation of parent and child. They wanted education to be a full-time state industry. They wanted all mothers, International Women's Day, okay, this is what these guys really wanted. All women to be forced out of the home. Childcare was to be a state-run industry by government-employed nannies. Right? This is in 1884, books by Eagles. They laid all of this stuff out. Their hatred of religion and moral absolutes. Marx called religion the what? The obeyed of the masses. The full quote that goes with that is this. Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world, the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people. Pretty negative view. The second one from Marx, Fulton Sheen translated this out of the original French. Communism begins where atheism begins. I had a student of mine at a private school in Cleveland who went on to Grove City College, and he told me that they had their teacher who had taught history for 30 or 40 years retired, and they got a new teacher in from Penn State University. It was a Christian school, and this teacher told them that as Christians they should be communists. Which Marx would have told the guy he was out of his mind. Lenin would have told the guy he was out of his mind. Lenin said, all worship of a divinity is a necrophilia. Exactly. He was right. My wife always says, don't use that one. Especially when you talk to students, don't use that. I said, well, that really gets to the point, doesn't it? I mean, that's how much the guy hated religion. There is nothing more abominable than religion. Nothing more abominable than religion. They hated it. War on the Family, Marx wrote a letter to Engels where he said, blessed is he who has no family. Father, it's not one of the Beatitudes, right? I mean, Jesus left that one out. Blessed is he who has no family. They actually have in the manifesto these words, abolition of the family, exclamation mark. Even the most radical flare up at this infamous proposal of the communists. So by 1848, the notion of abolition of the family was already an infamous proposal by the communists. October 1917, the Bolsheviks take over. This becomes really the first communist state. This becomes the center for the global communist revolution. Who are these three characters? Lenin, Stalin, and Trotsky. Immediately have a 3-year civil war. About 7 million men, women, and children are killed. More than they lost in all of World War I. And Russia lost more people in World War I than any other country. They would establish right away the goal of a global communist revolution, which is what Marx always said. The final words of the manifesto are, workers of the world unite. We have a world to win, as he put it. And if you talk to communists to this day, they will say, I mean, they're still committed to the global revolution. It is our interest and our task, wrote Marx, to make the revolution permanent, not only in one country, but in all the leading countries of the world. Our Congress would read this stuff in the 30s and 40s, which is why they said Communist Party USA, which swore a loyalty oath to the Comintern, the Soviet Comintern. They said, you guys support a global revolution. You're not like any other party. Lenin, we've always emphasized one cannot achieve such a task as a socialist revolution in just one country. Our victory will be a lasting victory only when our undertaking will conquer the whole world, because we launched it exclusively counting on world revolution. And look at this, March 1919, the Party Congress. from Lenin. And again, if you're in America, you read this. Woodrow Wilson, the progressive, read this and said, these guys are barbarians. I'm on the left, but I'm not that far to the left. Right? This is bad. The existence of the Soviet republics side by side with the imperialist states for a certain period is unthinkable. In the end, either one or the other will conquer. Look at this quote. And before this result, a series of horrible conflicts between the Soviet Republic and the bourgeois states is unavoidable. Now, before this result, a bunch of singing Kumbaya and daisies in the hair and everybody having coffee together. No, a series of horrible conflicts is inevitable. So they created the Soviet Comintern, which was the Communist International, created it in March 1919. This would serve as the general staff of the world revolution. They would have, in every country, would have a liaison to the Soviet Comintern. Every country would have one communist party. It was only allowed one. That communist party had to answer to Moscow. So it started in March 1919. The American Communist Party was then started off in what became Communist Party USA. September 1919 in, ladies and gentlemen, what city? Chicago. I've got the document. It's in the Soviet Comintern archives of Communist Party USA at the Library of Congress. It's the first document from the American Communist Party. The letterhead, it says 1219 Blue Island Avenue. That's the address at the top of the letterhead. And the comrades are reporting to the Soviet Comintern. We've done it, we've done it, we've done it. We've established an American Communist Party. Party USA, what they call a Soviet America, they actually swore a loyalty oath. This is the loyalty oath in the 1930s when Stalin was killing tens of millions of people. If you join Communist Party USA, which is why the American Communist Party was completely different than any other party. This is the whole point, right? Well, what are you going to do if you ban that? You're going to ban the Socialist Party? You're going to ban this party? No. Just the one that plays itself to this. I pledge myself to rally the masses to defend the Soviet Union. My friend Herb Romerstein, who was an ex-communist, said, you have to understand, Communist Party USA members were loyal Soviet patriots. That's who they were dedicated to. And by the way, a lot of American communists, small c communists, wouldn't join Communist Party USA because they didn't want to swear loyalty to the Soviet Union. So if you actually joined CPUSA, you were really hardcore, including the editor of the Chicago Star newspaper in the 1940s, Frank Marshall Davis, who would go on to become a mentor to a guy named Barack Obama in the 1970s in Chicago. Frank's Communist Party USA number was 47544. Frank joined the Communist Party even after the signing of the Hitler-Stalin Pact. When many Jewish American communists left, Frank said, big deal. He joined it after the Hitler-Stalin Pact. William Z. To remain at all times a vigilant and firm defender of the Leninist line of the party, the only line that ensures the triumph of Soviet power in the United States. They wanted to create what William C. Foster, one of the first heads of Communist Party USA, called a Soviet America. His book was called Toward Soviet America. Foster was one of the founding board members of the ACLU, which was founded by Roger Baldwin, who was a small C communist. Baldwin wrote a 1929 book called Liberty Under the Soviets, founder of the ACLU. To his credit, he became an anti-communist and later required ACLU members to swear a loyalty oath to the United States rather than to the Soviet Constitution, which a few of the progressives in his ranks objected to. Lincoln Steffens, I am a patriot for Russia, the future is there. Langston Hughes, who's now required reading in public schools. Put one more S in the USA to make it Soviet. The USA, when we take control, will be the USSA. That was the goal. Bella Dodd. Bella Dodd, who was born with this beautiful Italian name, Isabella Maria Assumpta in Pacerno, Italy, comes to the United States and eventually joined the Communist Party. Heavily influenced by Columbia University, which is where Thomas Merton became communist for a time, and then Merton left. Whittaker Chambers became a communist at Columbia University. It's to the point where he ended up spying for the Soviet GRU. Even. Bella became an organizer for the teachers union in New York. She also wanted to have children, but the party told her not to. As a woman, she was not supposed to have children. She was not supposed to get married. As Whittaker Chambers said too, the party would tell him, always would advise abortion if whoever he was living with became pregnant. She said that she personally helped recruit over 1,000 communist men into American seminaries. There's differing numbers on this. Some sources say 1,100, some say 1,200. I've looked into this. I have not been able to verify that. But I mean, that would be, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but that would be an astounding feat. It wouldn't surprise me if they tried, because the communists in the Soviet Union did this with the Russian Orthodox Church. A good friend of mine, Vladimir Ruskov, who went to seminary, Russian Orthodox Church in the 1960s, said at least half of his fellow seminarians were KGB agents. That's what they did. Now they were able to do that there, especially because they controlled the Russian Orthodox Church. But she says that she was part of an attempt to place 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 communist men into American seminaries. I don't know. The communists would use every educational medium from the nursery school to the universities. The teachers were used on many fronts to establish a Soviet America and to secure victory in America. She later left the party. She was a convert via who? Sheen, who also converted Loretta Young, a friend of his, Jane Wyman, who was Ronald Reagan's first wife. Jane Wyman became such a devout Catholic. What TV show was she on in the 80s? Falcon Crest, right? Falcon Crest. She became so devout, her son, Mike Reagan told me this. She became so devout in the 1980s that she stipulated in her contract for Falcon Crest, she said, I'll do the TV show, but you have to make sure that a priest is on set every day to give me the Eucharist. Jane Wyman became a Third Order Dominican nun, buried in the habit. Actually buried in the habit. The Black Book of Communism by Harvard University Press, published in 1999, estimates that communist governments in the 20th century killed 100 million people altogether. If you really break this down, I don't need to go through all the exact numbers. Who's that guy there?
Lenin.
Lenin today, right? That's Lenin today, on display at his shrine in Red Square. Credits the USSR with only 20 million deaths. It's probably, Alexander Yakovlev says Stalin alone killed 60 to 70 million people. China is the worst of all time. 65 million here. Some say at least 70 million altogether. If you add all of these up, it's probably closer to about 140 million, which would be double the combined death tolls of World War I and World War II. Ronald Reagan said communism is like a disease. It's actually hard to find diseases that kill that many people in that period of time. The influenza epidemic after World War I didn't kill that many people. All right, those are some more numbers. How the church responded. How the Catholic Church responded. But I got to tell you, when I was Protestant and interested in the Catholic Church, this blew me away. When I saw the church encyclicals and how the church is an institution. And there's no other institution on the planet that has been so consistent and so brilliant, so thoughtful in confronting communism and socialism like the Catholic Church. 1846 encyclical, 1849, 1878. I'm going to review some of these. This one is my favorite. It's the first. Pope Pius IX, who was Pope from 1846 to, I'm going to check some your knowledge of dates here.
1878.
Wow, all right, good, you get it. That is 32 years, right? Second longest serving pope ever, next to Peter. And then John Paul II would be third after that. But the start of this 32-year-long pontificate, his first encyclical was called Qui Pluribus. It was on communism. 2 years before the Communist Manifesto was even published. I mean, when I read this as a Protestant, I thought, it's like this guy had a crystal ball. How could he know this? And I remember thinking, Catholics claim they have this thing called a magisterium, where the Holy Spirit speaks through and is like supernaturally infused to give the church the knowledge of things. I'll tell you, man, this would be a good case for it right here. I mean, this is unbelievably prophetic. He said communism was a dark design of men in the clothing of sheep, while inwardly ravening wolves. Saul Alinsky, right? What's the Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, a documentary that was done? He's a complicated kid. Now I can talk about him later. Look at this line. After taking their captives gently, they mildly bind them and then kill them in secret. They really weren't even doing that yet. That would ramp up about 71 years later. How do they know this? They make men fly in terror from all practice of religion. Then they cut down and dismember the sheep of the Lord. You know how many priests and bishops they tortured and persecuted? Pope Francis and the Congregation for the Causes of the Saints just declared venerable who? Cardinal Mindszenty. Cardinal Mindszenty. They did this to him. Drugged him, tortured him, tried to make him sign a confession. Incredible what they did to Cardinal Mindszenty. Their writings teach sinning. They spread widespread, disgusting infection. They are filled with deceit and cunning. You got to think of Angela Davis standing up there in a speech in front of a sea of young women in pink hats talking about climate change. Never once mentioning Marx, Lenin, Herbert Marcuse, cultural Marxism, the Frankfurt School, and all the stuff that she's been about for 60 or 70 years, right? Not about to start quoting Marx. Then everyone will know. Then even somebody like, I didn't come here for this. And look at this. As a result of this filthy medley of errors, we see morals deteriorated, Christ's most holy religion despised, the majesty of divine worship rejected, the power of this apostolic seed planted, the authority of the church attacked and reduced to base slavery, the rights of bishops trampled on, and the sanctity of marriage infringed. I don't know how they got that one right. But by the 1920s, 1930s, the Soviet Union had the highest divorce rates in history, and the highest abortion rates in history. Preston, they were averaging 7 to 8 million abortions per year in the Soviet Union in the 1970s. Abortion got so bad that in 1936, Stalin banned it. He said, we're not going to have a country left. Khrushchev brought it back. You can't be a good communist and ban abortion. You must have abortion. Pope Leo XIII, more quotes from him on this. And here, this is on socialism. So Leo XIII, 1878, right? How many years? 25, right? 1903. This is a great Rerum Novarum. Pope, he did Rerum Novarum. We speak of that sect of men who under various and almost barbarous names are called socialists, communists, and nihilists. So I'm bringing this in now because they're not just condemning communism, they're condemning socialism, which a lot of our millennials today and other people are saying, I'm not a communist, I'm a socialist. Right? Socialism isn't bad or is bad. They leave nothing untouched. Here's my favorite. If you got phones, you want to take a picture of this one, you might need to share this one with Professor of Social Justice at the local erstwhile Catholic University. Quadragesimo Anno, May 1931, is one of the most important encyclicals in the history of the Catholic Church. It came up with the top 5 of encyclicals, especially on economics, this would be one. He said here, religious socialism, Christian socialism, are contradictory terms. No one can be at the same time a good Catholic and a true socialist. No one can be at the same time a good Catholic and a true socialist. Yikes. Right? I'm not a communist, I'm a socialist. Are you Catholic? Yeah, I'm a Catholic socialist. He said you can't do that. You can't do. They're incompatible. There's no such thing. Divini Redemptoris on Atheistic Communism by Pope Pius XI in March 1937. This one's the most scathing of all of them. I mean, Ronald Reagan calling the USSR an evil empire was mild compared to this. It said communism is a satanic scourge orchestrated by the sons of darkness. Marxists were working on behalf of the powers of darkness. This one is so remarkable because here they're saying, okay, let's get right to the heart of it. There's no rational explanation for this. Normal people just don't go and try to take away all your property and destroy marriage and family and everything. And then they're willing to do the gulags and blow up your churches. I mean, even Mussolini's like, don't do that to their religion. You're going to have a blood battle on your hands. Right? That's too much. Communists, no. We're gonna blow up every church. We're going to put in jail every nun. We're going to put in jail every priest. The church finally came out and said, that's because this is not of the natural, rational order. This is at the supernatural level. This is literally satanic. This is demonic. The evil we must combat is primarily an evil of the spiritual order. From this polluted source, the monstrous emanations of the communistic system flow with satanic logic. Pope Pius XII and FDR. Pope Francis is opening up the Pius XII archives. Before, he was the first pope to come to the United States, but he wasn't pope yet. At that point, he was Cardinal Eugenio Pacelli. And I found this in the archives, FDR's archives. He meets with FDR right after FDR was reelected in 1936, and they started arguing about communism. And FDR is telling him, Gene, you don't have to worry about the communists. It's the fascists you got to worry about. Eleanor and I have a bunch of friends who are communists, right? Alfred Hiss, right? Other guy, maybe Harry over here, right? Not Harry Truman. We got a bunch of good friends. I'm telling you, it's the communists you have to worry about. Pacelli said, Mr. President, you do not understand the danger of the communist system. He didn't get it. Communists would get them. They would eventually coin the term Hitler's Hope, which was started by Stalin and the Soviets in a Radio Moscow broadcast in 1945. That's where that phrase originated. They got him. Fulton Sheen, the best on the American side, fighting all of this. Marx was not first a communist and then an atheist. He was first an atheist and then a communist. That's absolutely true. Communism was merely the political expression of his atheism. He said the communists had put forth before the world an apocalyptic vision. They have thrown down the gauntlet to the world. The voice is either brotherhood in Christ or comradeship in Antichrist. And this is quite a statement. Communism was inspired not by the spirit of Christ, but by the spirit of the serpent, the mystical body of the Antichrist. He led the charge on this. Your boy here, right? From out here in Illinois. America's #1 theologian confronting the communist threat. Vatican II, I got to speed up a little bit. I don't want to take too much time. Vatican II actually had 3 documents that were not published, but had 3 documents. I can talk more about that later. But I want you to see a couple of others that are crucial here. This is Saint Pope John the 23rd, who liberal Catholics like to point to as the liberal pope, the good pope, Bonapapa, right? The good pope. He was canonized along with John Paul II to make the liberals in the church. Even he condemned communism and socialism. Look at this. No Catholic could subscribe even to moderate socialism. Ouch. Socialism takes no account of any objective other than that of material well-being. It places too severe a restraint on human liberty. Paul VI, I'm going to skip him. John Paul II. So everything changes with Karol Wojtyła, who's chosen as the 264th chair to the heir of St. Peter, October 16, 1978. Conclave gets together in the Sistine Chapel, picks the first non-Italian pope in 455 years. First Slavic pope, first Polish, right smack out of the middle of the communist bloc. Amazing. Ronald Reagan would see this as providential. He would go to Poland 9 days, June 1979, and for his opening homily, spoke in Victory Square. Gotta love that, right? The symbolic importance. Victory Square. And he went there and he said exactly what the comment. Look at the size of that crowd. They'd never seen anything like it in Poland. And all around the outside of the perimeter are the communist secret police with guns. He tells everybody, be not afraid. Be not afraid. And issues this statement: there can be no just Europe without the independence of Poland marked on its map. Which really, really, really infuriated the Kremlin. So much so, this is a part of my book, Pope and a President, that they hired this guy, Mehmet Ali Pasha, a Turk. Dropped him off 9 a.m., May 13, 1981. He's waiting there at St. Peter's Square. John Paul II finally comes around in his white Fiat Popemobile. Asha is concealing a 9mm semi-automatic Browning. John Paul II kisses a baby the mother holds to him, gives the baby back. And then Asha pulls out the gun four times. Shoots 4 times. Hit him once in the hand, once in the abdomen. You see him falling into the arms of his aide, Father Zivich, who's now Cardinal Zivich, still alive in Poland. What day was it? Feast day of Our Lady of Fatima. Is that not amazing? Named for the first of May 13, 1981. George Weigel says the time on the clock was 5:13 p.m. It's like the date 5/13/81. Mary had appeared 6 times. The last was the miracle of the sun. She offered 3 predictions to the 3 shepherd children. Who are the 3 kids? Jacinta, Lucia, Francisco, right? She gives 3 predictions. By the way, it's so believable because the kids can't make this up, right? 3 Portuguese foreign kids. So one prediction was the end of one world war, the start of another. The second was what they called the rise of communism and Bolshevism, that it would spread its errors, particularly against the church. And context here, the communists didn't take over Russia until October 26, 1917. This is way ahead of that. And no one at that point thought Lenin was going to go. I mean, the Tsar just abdicated a few weeks earlier. Lenin was sitting in Switzerland, waiting for the Germans to put him on a box. How could they possibly do this? Lenin in January said, that's it, I will not live to see the revolution. Depressed. How do they know? This lady told them. The third secret, God knows. The third secret predicted an attack on a bishop in white. Who's the only bishop that wears white? Bishop of Rome, Pope. Who apparently falls and dies, or is at least injured, gunfire, volley of gunfire. The third secret was kept secret until May 13, 2000, when it was released by the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, the head of which was who? Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger. John Paul II is sitting in Gemelli Clinic recovering from his wounds, and he asked to see the third secret of Fatima. This was July of 81. They bring it to him in Portuguese text and also an Italian translation. And he read this, he kept thinking to himself, 2/13 of May. May 13, 1917, May 13, 1981, Feast Day of Our Lady of Fatima. My papal motto is, yours to us, totally yours, Mary, right? Through Jesus. Mary's Queen of Poland. When my mother died, my father said, this is now your mother. She will protect you. And he looked at that and he read the third secret of Fatima. He said, this is me. This is me. It was calling for me to be shot, assassinated. My book focuses on this. Our CIA did a study on this. It still has not been released. I'm told it's because the Vatican doesn't want, well, that might be one of the reasons. It's hard to know. I'll just leave it at that. But it concluded that the Soviet GRU ordered the hit on the Pope. Actually, it was given the green light by the head of the KGB, Yuri Andropov. But it was a GRU, military intelligence, that ordered the hit. The Soviets, the communists, tried to kill the Pope. Tried to kill him. John Paul II was briefed on this by Bill Casey of the CIA. Thomas Melody, George H.W. Bush's ambassador to the Holy See, talked to him about it, asked him about releasing the information, making it public, releasing the report. John Paul II said, that's okay, let it go. Let it go. And he didn't need a CIA report to learn that the communists did it, right? He had the third secret of Fatima. That had convinced him. The collapse of communism would eventually come in 1989. You see Ronald Reagan there taking a chip out of the Berlin Wall. And I'll finish my story with my example with this. I just got a couple more slides, and then I'll take your questions. I think a brilliant post-mortem on the fall of communism was by Pope Benedict XVI in the encyclical Spe Salvi. And this really nails it. Marx presumed that with the expropriation of the ruling class, with the fall of the political power, and socialization of the means of production, which is what socialists also favor, as well as communists, the New Jerusalem would be realized. He thought that once the economy had been put right, everything would automatically be put right. The mistake that those guys made, and that a lot of socialists make to this day, is that they think if you solve the economic problem, including by secularists who are non-religious and atheistic, that will bring the heaven on earth, that will bring the New Jerusalem, that will bring the utopia. But the problem, as Jesus said, man does not live on bread alone. So if you look to take away their religion and replace it instead with some economic class thing, it's not going to work. Benedict XVI said the problem is they got their anthropology wrong. The communists didn't understand the nature of man. Hey, even Pope Francis agrees. Right? Everybody's like, oh. The Marxist ideology is wrong. And then the classic Francis statement. But I have met many Marxists in my life who are good people. That's like the FDR statement, right? Gene, I know it's wrong, but Eleanor and I we got a bunch of friends who are communists. Yeah. All right, to wrap this up, last slide. This is a righteous battle that the church won. And all the time today, we're bellyaching and moaning about all the bad stuff that's going on in the church, right? As we should. I'm from Pennsylvania, right? The Pennsylvania Abuse Report. I was baptized in the Pittsburgh Diocese. The Erie Diocese is what I belong to right now. It's really easy to get negative. Sometimes it's good to look back and look at some really bad evils that our church has consistently fought and defeated. Not forever, right? But certainly won the Cold War, at the very least. This section of the Catechism is one of my favorites. This is 409. 409, right? Got it? 409. The whole of man's history has been the story of dour combat with the powers of evil, stretching, so our Lord tells us, from the very dawn of history until the last day. The sooner you realize that, I think the happier that you'll be. ISIS, we've been fighting guys like ISIS for centuries. Communists, before that it was the Nazis and the fascists. Before that it was the Kaiser. Back before that, it was the Jacobins and the French Revolution. It never goes away. It's always a different battle, maybe always under a different guise. In a way, it's always the same source, but get used to it, all right? You live your whole life fighting some evil out there. Finding himself in the midst of the battlefield, man has to struggle to do what is right, often at great cost to himself, including with someone like John Paul II, sometimes even taking a couple bullets for it as well. All right, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Now we're going to entertain a few minutes of questions, but mark at the end of the sentence, okay? So keep it short, keep it to the point, and if I don't hear a question mark, I'll call you out. Yes, Ronald.
You know the date of Pius's as bishops?
Oh, yeah. Oh, great. It was May 13th, 1917.
It's the same moment that they were seeing he was being ordained a bishop.
Is that amazing? So Pope Pius XII, when he was ordained Bishop of Bavaria, the date was May 13th, 1917. When he could not have known that Mary had descended to speak to these 3 shepherd children at that point. And by the way, the communists tried to assassinate him when he was Bishop of Bavaria. And he had opposed the communists then, he opposed Hitler as well, saved the lives of many, many, many Jews. The smear against him as Hitler's Pope is one of the most egregious, successful smear character assassinations ever pulled off. It's really a shame. I don't think they'll be able to canonize the guy for 100 years, frankly, because so many people are convinced that he was Hitler's Pope. When it's a phrase that was coined by Stalin and the communists. By the way, they called Minzenti. They used the same. They did that smear against all bishops after World War II. The Soviets did. Oh, I hear that he collaborated with Hitler, eh? They did that over and over and over again. They even tried doing it to John Paul II. They even tried doing it to him.
We just posted an article this morning by the author of the book that sort of counteracted all that. Heisman, I believe his name is.
Oh, yeah, it could be. So Ron Richlack has written a number of books. Oh, the Spies book. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, that's very good. Sister Margarita.
If you're interested, look at it. One of the points he makes is that actually most of the Vatican archives had been released. It was mostly released in French, and so some of the key scholars who didn't know French didn't bother to read through all that stuff. And I guess now it's coming out in more languages, but he said he doesn't really expect any big surprises. They're just wrong. And it's a very interesting interview. Yeah, Preston.
Great presentation. So, could you please speak to how socialism and communism are fundamentally the same, and also how they both strive to remake the nature of man?
Yeah, it's a great question. My friend Marion Smith at the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, which was created to honor the victims of communism, just as we have a Holocaust memorial. And Marion likes to say that Christians go to heaven, socialists go to communism. Right? And that's because in Marxist-Leninist theory, socialism is a way station on the way to communism. So history in this dialectical progression or evolution, Marx was a big evolutionist, and in fact, Darwin's family objected to Marx trying to dedicate one of his books to Darwin. And at Marx's funeral, Engels quoted Darwin. He said he was doing for the social sciences and economics what Darwin had done to scientific thought. So Marx created this evolution of man, where humanity would travel from feudalism to capitalism to socialism and then to communism. So socialism was just one step on the way to communism. Now that said, if you run into American socialists today, they will say, yeah, but I don't want to go there, right? I'm for a different type of socialism. I'm for democratic socialism, which is the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America. Who's their poster girl? AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's an actual member of the Democratic Socialists of America. So it's amazing, you have a DSA member who ran as a Democratic Party member and got elected to Congress, but she's a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. If you go to their website, you don't have to go to the About page. You open it right now from your phone. It will say, the Democratic Socialists of America are, quote, the largest socialist organization in the United States. So they refer to themselves as socialists. And right now they have they're claiming about 40,000 to 50,000 members. So they're enjoying a surge in membership. Communist Party USA only has about 5,000 members. The DSA has 10 times that number. But if you ask 10 different socialists for a definition of socialism, you'll get 10 different answers. And Bernie Sanders has been asked, all right, if you type in socialism on your phone right now, Merriam-Webster or some short definition will pop up, and it will say common ownership of the means of production. which is the same definition as communism. So Bernie Sanders was asked in 2016, okay, if that's the case, what all would you nationalize as president? Would you nationalize the coal companies? Would you nationalize healthcare? Would you nationalize the gas industry? All of which were nationalized in Britain right after World War II. Would you nationalize car companies? What all would you nationalize? And these are questions that everyone who claims that he or she is a socialist needs to be asked. Right? I want to know. Bernie said, well, I wouldn't nationalize the corner grocery store. Oh, hallelujah. Good. All right. What, just health care? What would it be? So a lot, and this is part of the problem of our education system, especially our horrible universities. They haven't taught what this means. One of the early surveys where, it was one of the first ones where millennials said they prefer socialism over capitalism. It was like by 44 to 42% or something like that. The only kind of good takeaway I had from that is they said, how do you define socialism? And they said, well, it's about people loving one another. It's about people sharing. It's about people being kind to one another, which means they don't actually know what it is. So maybe there's an opportunity that if we tell them, no, it means taking away your property, taking away your beautiful little phone that you're addicted to, right? Right? You do the Green Deal and you ban cows, you're not going to get to have your latte at Starbucks, dude. All right? Where do you think that comes from? All right? So they don't know this stuff.
Yeah, Dan.
I want to ask you about Bella Dodd. I've read her book, okay,
School of Darkness.
Yeah, and there's nothing in there about any anti-Catholic activities. And she talks all about her educational infiltration and stuff like that she's involved with. I'm wondering, one, where the actual, were you able to find the actual primary source for the quote we see all over the blog center about inserting communists into the hierarchy? Where did this come from, and how reliable do you think her actual, if she said this, okay, how reliable her recollection of this is?
Yeah, it drives me crazy. I did an hour-long interview with Al Cresta in the afternoon. So if you Google his archives with me on Paul Kengor and Bella Dodd, you can listen to a long discussion that we had on it. It's not in her memoirs. It's not in her congressional testimony. It's not in what's claimed to be her Fordham speech, something that's claimed to be her Utica speech. The best that I can tell, there are a few people that said that they heard her say it and even signed sworn affidavits to it. Mary Nicholas, who is a retired MD from Maine, has a book manuscript on Bella Dodd. She's traced all of it. She's done a beautiful job with it. So she appears to have said it to some people, including to Dr. Alice von Hildebrand as well, who's a great, very reliable source. But otherwise, she did not know. She didn't say it in her book. She didn't say it in congressional testimony, which doesn't mean she didn't say it. There are people who swore that she told them that. So I think there's probably a scale of 1 to 10, about a 5 reliability that she probably said it. I wish we had audio of her saying it. Then the more important question is, if she did say it, is it really true? And how in the world do they go about doing this? And that I have not been able to find proof of. But it is interesting that it's after Vatican II that you see a lot of the clergy move left, including into liberation theology. Look what happened to the Jesuits, right? Not all of them, but a good portion of them, right? Malachi Martin's book, The Jesuits, he goes all through this. It certainly wouldn't be true of Mitch Pacwa from Chicago, right? He's a Jesuit who didn't move in that direction, but a large number of them did. How do they possibly go that far to the left when you have all these church encyclicals on communism and socialism? Well, it would make sense then that if there wasn't infiltration in seminaries, then that could have maybe helped lead to some of it. But that's just speculation on my part.
Can I follow up? There's in the blogosphere now, there's a lot of talk about the St. Gallen Institute as a place in Switzerland which was a place of indoctrination for communists in the Catholic Church. Do you know anything about that? Can you gratify that to any degree?
No, I don't. And I'd say generally what's happened, especially with a lot of Catholic universities, is there's just been a broader embrace of I won't say secular progressivism, but religious progressivism on the general wider religious left that has elevated what they call social justice issues, which is not social justice fully and properly defined. There's a imam at my church who wears a shirt, social justice starts in the womb. And they don't talk about it, they will use social justice as almost code language for a kind of nanny state socialism. And yet they don't talk about religious freedom, religious life, marriage, gender, according to as defined by the church. So that overall sort of general left progressive push, I think, has probably helped enable some of this, more than a communist infiltration.
I'm going to take one from this side. Mickey?
Paul, thank you very much for the education and inspiration today. My question for you is, if the church has won this battle against Satan, why does it feel like they're losing?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. And why does it feel like we're losing? And I would say, whereas we won this battle on the battlefield, right, from the Cold War, John Paul II, Ronald Reagan, Fulton Sheen, Claire Booth Luce, William F. Buckley Jr., some of these, Cardinal Mindszenty, we've lost it in the classroom. And I've been telling people for 20 or 30 years, I've been telling them, you got to see what's going on in the universities. Because, we're 20, 30 years, this is going to really come back to get us. We are not teaching the lessons of the Cold War. The only bad Joe that you hear about in the Cold War is Joe McCarthy. Not Joe Stalin. The Victims of Communism did an unbelievable survey about 4 years ago where 32% of millennials and 28% of all Americans, so the numbers are almost equal there, believe that George W. Bush killed more people than Joseph Stalin. That's just sick. It's absolutely sick. Near me in Gettysburg, PA, where Lincoln gave his address, they did a halftime show at a football game called St. Petersburg 1917, Berlin 1938. Right? People don't get it. They don't understand. So we've lost the battle in the classroom. We really have. Send your kids to the right colleges, please.
I'm going to get one more. Go ahead.
You mentioned Dr. Belladon's Utica speech. Towards the end of the speech, she is asked a question about Catholics in seminaries, and I encourage anyone who's interested in the answer to that question to look at the Utica speech, because she doesn't say anything about 1,000 men in seminaries. So I've heard the rumors, I've looked into it,
yeah.
And I don't see.
I haven't found it either, right?
I don't see evidence for that either. Mm-hmm. But another thing she mentions in that Utica speech is that that there's a conspiracy behind communism. She differentiates the communist conspiracy, the Communist Party, and the communist movement.
Yes.
And my question to you is this communist conspiracy, which she says is extremely wealthy conspiracy that is working for the control of the world's resources, and communism is therefore a tool of the workers and the lower classes to work for this conspiracy. Why have you looked into this conspiracy behind communism? And if you have not, why have you not? And also, how does this tie in with secret societies the popes since Pope Clement XII in 1738 has written about, including the secret society Humanum Gentis.
Yeah, Freemasonry and the modernists, right? I think probably the most prescient of all, and maybe this will be a shorter answer to your question, but the general modernist heresy. So a lot of what you're seeing today is not anything that's being orchestrated by communists. There's basically about 5 communist countries in the world right now, right? North Korea, Cuba, Vietnam, Laos, China, Venezuela. By the way, Hugo Chavez and those guys called it 21st century socialism. You should read People's World and some of these other publications. They were on fire for Venezuela 10 or 15 years. This was the new third way. Now they're all backing away from it. Well, that's not really what we mean when we talk about democratic socialism. It was 10 years ago. You find out that it looks a lot like 20th century communism, and they start back. Well, the problem they always say is, well, none of them have done it right Democrats. If you just put us in power, with our degrees from wherever, and put us in charge and give us the money and taxation, we'll figure this out. So I'd say the problem less today is a conspiracy. I mean, back in her time, there was the Comintern, the Common Forum, and so forth. But today, it's just a general zeitgeist, what Fulton Sheen called the spirit of the age.
How do you
What
know?
Benedict XVI called the anonymous power. It's more frustrating today because it's hard to find anybody who's pulling the strings. Like in the 40s, you could say, well, the Comintern's behind this, and it was. Today, it's much harder to pin down, which also makes it a lot harder to fight. What do I tell you guys, right? Well, we're losing it in the classroom. Okay, how do you fix that tomorrow? Right? I guess you just fight back with doing what we're doing, right? Madonna, things like this, education, education, education. Basically what the other side has done, but combat them, counter them.
Thank you very much.